He was 16 years old. He just got a phone call from a close friend at school. And he said, "My friends, I can't take this anymore. I can't live life much longer. Today's going to be my last day. I'm going to end it all. I can't handle this anymore. I quit. I'm going to end my life today." And then he responds to his friend, and the 16-year-old, he says, "Okay, but I understand, but before you commit suicide, would you be willing to do this one thing first?" I'm going to tell you what that one thing is first. But before, I want to say my name is Enoch Leffingwell, and with the Army of Youth, we help young people to identify their unique talents and dedicate them to the Lord's service. And I will share with you what that one thing that he had him do that saved his life from suicide. But first, I want to give you a message of hope. You see, in my experience, from age 11 to 16, I was severely depressed. I was living an aimless life, which was a living death. I had no hope for the future. I pushed away everybody that I wanted to bring closer to me. It seems like there's nothing really in life was working. And it seems like the more that I tried, the more that I failed. So it made me wonder, why should I even try any longer? My relationships with my family was really breaking down. I was so lonely. I was bullied as a kid. I was the second fattest kid of an elementary school of about 1,000 students. And the first fattest kid, he did end up committing suicide in high school. In fact, myself, I was planning on killing myself too. I couldn't imagine living life beyond 18 years old. I promised myself that I would never live to see my 18th birthday because I couldn't imagine life being in such a tormented state. I couldn't imagine life beyond childhood. Just seemed so heavy to bear, and it's not something that I cared to live. And I figured there's just so much pain, there's so much things that happened to me that brought so much discouragement on my soul. And I just want to talk to you. If you're thinking about committing suicide today, I want to share with you my story of how I know that there is hope for the hopeless. Because when I was 16, I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I was at this party. I was drunk and I was high. And I was at the bottom of the bowl. And I was at this party. I was drunk. And I just remember, this is the lowest I've ever been. This is the most depressed, the most discouragement I've ever had in my life. I've hit rock bottom. And I recognize that moment of lowness. You know that low that it's like nothing compares? And you can't imagine how much lower you can go? That's where I was. And because of that, there was this contrast, this question came to my mind. Well, when was I the happiest? And it was like, instantly, I knew it was when I was on fire for Christ. I was like, wait a second. You mean to tell me that I had the most joy, the most peace, and the most happiness when I was on fire for Christ? Because I am that is the farthest thing from me right now than the East is from the West. Like, that's the last thing on my mind. But I'm like, oh, well, I don't have joy. And I have tormenting thoughts constantly. I have to be constantly playing the video games or just drowning my mind with food, with drugs, with relationships, with family, with different friends, or just something to distract my mind from the tormenting thoughts. And this isn't really a life worth living. And if I had that joy once, I thought, well, then maybe I can have it again. And I always hear that God is a God of love. And I heard that, well, if I reasoned in my mind that if God really loves us, then he must always want us to have this joy. He must always want us to have this peace. I couldn't imagine a loving God creating us so that we could live in such a miserable state of existence like I did, constantly wishing that I could go to sleep and never wake up again. That I would see the morning and I'd just be like, no, not another day. And then I'd see the night and I'd just be like, I couldn't sleep at night because I felt like there's just so much that wasn't done, or that something that needed to be done and I wasn't fulfilling it. And so I had no purpose. I had no reason to live. And it doesn't make sense that a loving God would create, and that would be their plan and purpose, just to have us like that. So I started seeking after God, and I had this one burning question. I wanted to know, what must I do to have a relationship with God? Because I want that. I figured then if I had it before and I lost it, the problem was probably with me, something I did in the equation, not with God, a loving God, if he really did love us. And so I went to this youth camp where I had given my heart to Christ when I was younger, but it didn't really last, and it faded away. And the reason why I went there is because there was this one man, I remember it so clearly. I was 16 years old, and this man, he was beaming with the love of Jesus, and he had this peace and this joy, this atmosphere around him that it's like, I want what he has, whatever that is, I want that. And there he was, just as I remember. I get this call to go, and I'm at this youth camp, and he gathers all the young people together, and he gathers us, and he says, young people, God has a plan for your life. God has a plan that if you're willing to dedicate yourself to Christ's service, if you're willing to give him your heart, to allow him to work in your life in a way that he otherwise couldn't, if you didn't give him permission, he will show you a life full of joy, full of peace, a life that you can't even imagine now, if you would only give him your heart. And the message just resonated with me. I'm like, God has a plan for my life. He loves me. And I was just like, wow, I want that, because whatever I'm doing isn't working. So I started to pray, and I started to ask God, Lord, what must I do to have a relationship with you? And he told me two things. You got to quit playing video games, and you got to change your friends. And I was like, ugh. You mean to tell me the one thing that gives me like a semblance of happiness, the one thing that kind of distracts my mind and numbs my mind from the pain, is like, you want me to quit playing video games? And it's like, I couldn't imagine life without video games, because that was my coping mechanism to distract my mind from the discouragement, the depression, the despondency, the tormenting thoughts. But God's like, yes, that's what I want. For you to have a relationship with me, you can't spend so much time trying to avoid the fundamental issue of life. And that is, a relationship with me takes time. I want your time. And I began to realize, I'm like, at that moment, it was one of the most hardest decisions of my life. But I started to look back, and I was like, everything I did to this point has not got me anywhere. In fact, I don't even want to live. So I have nothing to lose. And I looked forward, and I said, well, I have potentially eternal life to gain. So I didn't just dip my toe in the water. I cannonballed in. And I said, I'm going to not just test it or try it. I'm going to go full force. I'm an all-in type of guy. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it wholeheartedly. And in this moment, I chose to give my heart to Christ. I chose to give Jesus a chance. Because everything else that I did, it was like gropes of sand. And it just, my promises were just falling through. And I needed something that could be stronger than myself. And I accepted Christ, and I put away the video games, and I started to change my friends, and I started to have joy again. I had peace. It's like it was flooding my soul. I'm like, what do I do with this? I've never experienced this before. And I realized the difference in my life at that moment, why that has not gone away. That was 8 years ago, or 9 years ago. And I'm 25 now. I promised myself I wouldn't live to be 18. I remember my 18th birthday. I was at a evangelistic seminar. I was preaching, and I was giving meetings. And I just remember that day, because like, imagine if from age 11 years old, in a large portion of your childhood, you knew that you were going to end your life before you ever turned 18. The thought of seeing that day, like, I never thought that would be a possibility, because I made a strong decision. But Jesus gave me a reason to live. Jesus gave me a purpose, and he's been revealing to me his plan. I've been finding more direction from him. And as I mentioned, giving my heart fully to God, not just dipping my toe in the water, but really cannonballing in. That was one of the most difficult decisions I ever made in my life, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And what I have learned from them since is that a lot of the times our biggest challenge is not that our lives are so terrible, it's that what we're focusing on seems to grow so tremendously. As long as I would focus on my pain and I'd focus on my problems, there's a law of focus that what we focus on, we find. Matthew 7:7. And what we focus on grows. That Galatians 6:7 says, whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. So in this law of sowing and reaping, you have the seed and you have the fruit. Discouragement is a fruit. Overwhelmness is a fruit. Depression is a fruit. And instead of lamenting and crying and being so stressed out about the fruit, the result of depression, we should ask ourselves, what is the seed that produced that fruit? And I'd submit to you, friends, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16 and 17, the Bible says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. God has a glorious plan for your life. And if you accept him today, he's going to show you incredible things you've never dreamed of. But the secret is in being thankful, learning to be grateful for everything in life. Even the things that seem like they would be a problem, if we can learn to see something that we can appreciate about these discouragements. And when I had to change my focus in these experiences that caused trauma to me, in these experiences where I was neglected or I was abandoned or I went through some of the most painful experiences of my life, I had to learn to appreciate and find purpose for the pain, because knowing that God wouldn't ask us to be thankful for anything that was to do us harm. I learned in Psalms chapter 119 verse 71, it says, it is good for me that I've been afflicted. Why? That I might learn thy statutes. So all of these trials, all these hardships that we go through, it's not happening to me. I was learning it was happening for me. Everything in life is happening for us, not to us. That was a major shift. And learning to be grateful for those things made all of the difference. Because here's the truth, my friends. You could be depressed or you can be grateful, but you cannot be both at the same time. You could be discouraged or you could be grateful, but you cannot be both at the same time. Anytime that I find myself slipping into depression or discouragement or any painful emotion, we could immediately just start asking, what can I be grateful about this situation or this thought or this thing that is making me feel discouraged? And when we can learn to find something to appreciate in that moment, just 3 things at least, in that moment, you will instantly start to see your feelings are going away. And you can start to see when we shift our focus from what's missing, what we feel should be in our life but isn't, to the things that we're grateful that we have, everything changes. When we learn to trade our expectation for appreciation, everything changes. A mentor of mine once said that all upset is because of unmet expectations. So and this is amazing, when you really look at it, every time we get upset, every time we get hurt, every time we're experiencing painful emotions, you can trace it back to there was an expectation that was unmet. And I encourage you that if there is a trigger, let an unmet expectation be a trigger. When you start feeling that upset, ask yourself, what was the expectation that I had? And then ask yourself, what can I be grateful for instead? And as you learn to cultivate this attitude of gratitude, it will transform your life. It did for me. I now have a purpose. I have a joy. I can't wait to wake up in the morning and to do what I do. I'm living my calling. I know God's plan for my life, and it's incredible. And God has changed me so much that I want to help as many people as I can to make a similar decision, to give all to Jesus, to surrender our hearts to him today. And in this process of gratitude, this will make all of the difference, because when you focus on what you're grateful that you have, what you have will grow, because that focus is a seed. And when you sow the seeds of gratitude, you will reap the fruit of encouragement. The fruit, you will harvest joy. You will harvest peace. Peace, love, joy. This is the fruit of the Spirit. This is a fruit. So we have to find out, what is the seed that produces the fruit? Don't focus on the fruit, focus on the seed. And when we do that, then it's cause and effect. What you sow is what you reap. But as long as we're focusing on what's missing, we focus on our unmet expectation, we focus on what we think should be or what we don't have, it's going to cause depression and sorrow and pain. And learning to make this shift has made all of the difference. I wish I could share this with my friend who was the fattest kid in my elementary school, but he's not here anymore. He didn't hear this, and I wish he did. But I am so grateful that in high school, someone was willing to tell me God had a plan for my life. And I'm here to tell you, God has a plan for yours. Don't give up hope. There is hope for the hopeless. I know, because there's hope for me. I found it when I was in gross darkness. And I know God has a plan for you, my dear friends. God loves you. I love you. And you do not have to end it today. Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle. After every storm, the rainbow is there. There is a blessing if you persevere, if you wait just one more day and you just don't do it yet and choose today to serve Christ. And I was giving a message similar to this. It was a couple weeks ago. I was in church and I was delivering a message, and I was sharing how gratitude and recognizing the things that we want to see more of in life will actually bring us more joy and peace, and it will help us. I noticed there was a 16-year-old who was in the audience. He was taking copious notes. He was really engaged. He was raising his hand, and then he got a phone call. And on that phone call, he had to leave the message. And I was like, he's not here. He's going to miss it. He was really enjoying this. But after I delivered the message and I shared, he came up to me. He was so excited. He's like, hey, look, I just got off the phone with my dad. And my dad had called me while you were speaking, and I really enjoyed what you were doing. But look at this. I've got a list of 80 things that I am grateful for. And look, I got on the phone with my dad. My dad's an atheist. He's not a believer. And he was just talking about all these things that he's complaining and he's being critical and criticizing different things people are doing. And I was like, wait. But Dad, what are you grateful for? And he's like, imagine if you woke up tomorrow with only those things you were grateful for today. I'll say that again. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow with only those things that you were grateful for today. And his dad was listening. He's like, whoa, that's a heavy thought. And his son was like, would you be grateful for your nose? Would you be grateful for your phone? Would you be grateful for your brain? Would you be grateful for me? What would you be grateful for? And he's like, well, yeah, I'd be grateful for this and this. It's like, would you be trying to search for everything grateful you could possibly be if you knew that you're only going to wake up tomorrow with what you're grateful for today? He's like, well, yeah, I would try to list out everything I could as fast as I could. And so they were able to pump out 80 things that they were grateful for. And it transformed the way that his dad looked at life. And so he went through that experience. He told me, and I was like, wow, that was so awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then later on that week, I didn't know this happened, but he got a phone call from a student at school, and that student was about to end his life. And this 16-year-old who sat in my class, and he was saying, wait, before you commit suicide, do this one thing first. Just make a list. Make a list of things that you're grateful for. Just take a moment to recognize What are you thankful that you have? What do you have? Don't think of the pain and the problems and the sorrows. Like, I know this young man, he used to be suicidal as well. But now he has a joy, he has a strength, he's excited to move forward. He's even told me he planned a time where he was going to commit suicide. But a conversation I had with him saved his life. And as he went through, he was talking to his friend, and he had his friend listing off some things he was grateful for. And as he was going through this list, his friend said, you know what? I've decided to live another day. I'm not going to end my life. This isn't going to be the end. And thank you so much for sharing this with me. I'm not going to do it. And it was such a blessing, because this one habit, this one principle and truth was able to transform so many people's lives. And it can transform yours too, if you allow it to today. Just this secret of having more. I want to encourage you, friends. If you want a system, if you want to be encouraged in the way, in having an accountability to journal what you're grateful for, I encourage you to write a journal. A gratitude journal. Every day, list 10 things that you are thankful for, never repeating those 10 things. Each day, different 10 things. Do it for 60 days and see that it will not transform your life. This is why we put together this daily account book called Live Your Calling Daily Account Book. In this account book, there is writing prompts. One of the sections on here is, what are you grateful to God for today? And here you can list out your 10 thank yous. 10 thank yous for the day of what you can do. And imagine living your calling, knowing your true purpose. In this process, you will discover who you are. You will discover who God is. You will discover God's plan for your life, his calling that he has placed. And I promise you, friends, I know you were created for a purpose, and God has a reason for your existence. Do not quit now. And I encourage you, if you want to get your copy of the Live Your Calling Daily Account Book, you can just go to thearmyofyouth.com/account book and order yours today. That's again, thearmyofyouth.com/account book. And you can start living your calling and writing your 10 thank yous. And I want to encourage you, friends, that if you enjoyed this video, if you think this could help someone, let them know. Send this message. Share a link to this message to someone who needs to hear this, who may be discouraged, who may be going through a difficult time. Share someone who do you love that could understand the value and the power of gratitude, this attitude of gratitude. Let them know today. You can be that messenger that you wish you had. You can be as that man who is beaming with the love of Jesus, who saved me today, which I'm here because of his efforts, and they could be here tomorrow because of your efforts. Let them know. Share it with someone that you care about. And if you like this video, and let me know in the comments, what are you grateful for? Thank you so much for watching. And remember, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.